Welcome back to another episode of the K2C podcast, the Kenya to Canada podcast. My name is Ambrose, and on the other side, we have Trina.
Hello, everyone. I hope you're all doing well. It's a pleasure to join you once again for another episode. I look forward to this one.
Yeah. So we were discussing prior what we want to talk about. Maybe for a change, you could tell them what we're going to be talking about in this particular episode.
Well, today we'll be talking about my experience searching for a job here in Ottawa when I started studying.
Mm,
So, from the process of getting the job, what kind of job I was looking into, that's just basically an overview of what we'll be talking about today.
okay. And just based off of even how you've introduced, I would like us to start uh, off the rip by asking what kind of job were you looking for?
Right. So when I came, I was looking for something simple, nothing really too tasking. I didn't want anything that involved me engaging my brain in a complex manner. I wanted something that I could use to escape academics and still be able to get fruits of my labor. So I was looking into like retail, I was looking into care work, I was looking into I dabbled into cleaning just a little bit, like janitor work. Yeah, I was just exploring different areas, but I just didn't want something that I would get back home and be like, I'm exhausted.
Mm.
I wanted to be able to get back home and be like, you know what? I could read for like another hour or two and then relax.
Okay, so you still wanted to have energy when you get back home in order to do
Exactly.
other stuff to do with being a student.
Yeah.
Okay, so you've mentioned two main things that you are looking into. You said retail, right? What did you call it? Was it retail?
It was retail, yes.
And then the second one was
Care work.
care work. Okay. Um,
Yes.
Okay, so maybe we can start from the top because I don't want us to just jump in. What has interested me is the care work and the retail, but I want you to lead us through your journey. How did it start out? Okay, you're now in Canada. You now know you have your number of hours you need to work per week. Take us through
Mhm.
that process for you, from the first job you found to the next one. Where I have a question, I'll interject, and let's just have a dialogue about it.
Yeah. So when I first got into Canada, I wasn't really I knew that I didn't want something that would be too tasking, but I wasn't very limited. I was open. I was willing to explore and figure out, okay, if I do this, then I'll be too exhausted by the time I get back to work. Or if I do this, I think I'll be okay. I'll work better and be able to get back home and study and proceed with my academics. So when I first got in, I did apply on Indeed. Initially people were telling me, go and drop off your resume, just print it out and go and drop it off at different stores and companies and then see if they're hiring. I was a little bit too shy for that. I wasn't very used to just putting myself out there. So I opted for the safer option, which was just applying through Indeed, applying to, like, I think I applied to probably 20 jobs in
Okay, so
different fields.
maybe even before you continue, sorry not to cut you short. For
Yeah.
people who do not know what Indeed is, what's that?
So Indeed it's a job search platform. So you can go onto it and um, say I'm looking for retail work in Ottawa, and then search, and it will tell you all the jobs that are available. Well, not really all, but the ones that have been posted on this website.
Okay,
And
are
then
there
through
are
the
there
website,
other uh-huh. And then through
sorry,
them?
through the website, you can go ahead and apply to these positions and submit your resume and cover letter.
Okay. Other than Indeed, are there other platforms that one can use of the same nature?
Yeah, so there's Workopolis. There's also, I think it's Job Bank Canada or something like that, which is jobs that have been, I guess, vetted to a certain extent by the Canadian government and are then now posted onto their website. There's also Glassdoor.
That's the one I was
Those
going
are
to mention. If
yeah,
you hadn't said
Glassdoor.
it. Yeah.
Those are the four main ones that I'm aware of, or like that keep popping up when you search for a job on Google. they always come up on one of those four platforms. Yeah.
Okay, so for you opted not to go the walk-in route and ask for a job. You opted to post online. And what was your success rate on using these platforms?
Well, I I applied for about 20 jobs, and I
Mm,
think I heard back from only like three or four, maybe probably three,
mm,
probably three. That's why I'm not really in favor of applying through these platforms. I would rather directly contacting the organization that I'm targeting. If it means applying on their website, I would prefer to do that than to apply on Indeed or any of these platforms. It's just a lot. It feels a lot better. I've had a lot more success doing it that way, even if it's just getting to the interview stage. There's been a lot more success applying directly.
So I take it when you heard back from these guys on Indeed, it was negative feedback. Like they say they didn't have jobs, right?
Yeah, or sometimes they'll tell you, you're not fit for the position. Sometimes they'll tell
Mm,
you, um, we've already found someone. This is them contacting you maybe 2, 3 weeks down the line. Other
mm,
times they'll just decline without really giving you any reason. They'll just kind of
mm.
decline your application. So you get a mix of responses.
And just to also share from my own experience, Uh, I did janitorial work, she has mentioned. Actually, before she came to Canada, I was doing it. And it just so happened that I was like, anyone can do it.
Try it.
Uh, when she tried it, she found it wasn't for her. And also for me, it was a learning experience. Like, I'm pretty adaptable, like more adaptable than I think I am sometimes, because someone else would be like, yo, that's some crazy type of work you're doing. And me, I was like, there's nothing wrong with this. This is a life. Yeah, but so when I was looking to transition and change a job, at a certain point, which I didn't go through with, but I reached the point of actually submitting um my resume. I actually did it on Indeed. I went for Starbucks. I went for what else? There's another one I've forgotten that's popular in Canada. I think it's Tim
Tim
Hortons.
Hortons?
Yes, yes. So I also submitted to Tim Hortons, and where else? I think I did Domino's as well, but I'm not sure about Domino's. I might not have put Domino's, but I did like two or three, and of all of them, only one came back, and it came back negative. So as well, like when you told me that it like you sent out 20, I was curious to hear what your success rate was, and you're saying
Was.
three, so I guess the audience can judge for itself
Yeah.
what route to go with that.
Yeah.
Have you, maybe we can speak to, do you have friends who have submitted their CVs or their resumes directly through the websites of these companies? Like, for example, a Tim Hortons, and then they succeeded.
Yes, so I had a couple of friends who submitted their applications to Loblaws, which is a grocery store. It's a pretty big grocery store here, and they got the jobs and the position. I have a friend who also submitted to Simon's, which is like a clothing store here. So it's like in retail. So they submitted directly on their website. They got it. Another friend submitted to like Hudson's Bay, which is another retail store on their website. They got it. So there's been a lot more. I've heard a lot more success. I've heard of a lot more success on websites than I have on Indeed. Indeed, they'll just tell you, "Oh, I applied," and as you said, I haven't got any feedback, and it's going on 6, 7 months now. Now you
Yeah,
kind of just realize, yeah, it's not happening.
yeah, that is not for you.
It's not for you exactly.
Okay, so I feel like now would be a good time to go on to the next thing. After you tried out uh, the janitors and then you tried out, did you get the janitorial job before trying Indeed or after?
I got it after. So I got it through Indeed.
So Indeed
Yeah,
was successful to a certain extent.
exactly. It was
Uh,
successful for this one job. So when I heard back from three, I made it to one of them said, "Oh, we're reviewing your resume and stuff like that." So when I heard back from the janitorial job, They gave me the interview pretty early on. I went, I did the interview, and got the job on the spot. I was like, I don't really need to consider all the other two. So I
Mm.
just kind of withdrew my application for the other two. Um, the janitorial job didn't last as long.
You said one day.
It was a 1 day thing. It
That's funny.
was a 1 day thing because it was so physically demanding. By the time you get back home, like you're working an 8 hour shift
Mm.
from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. By the time you get back home at 6 p.m. at like 6:30 p.m., 7 p.m. you're knocked out. So you can't really do anything the following day or the night before. You're just physically exhausted. And I guess that was also because it was my first day. It was probably and probably needed a bit of time to get used to. But after feeling that exhaustion, I was like, yeah, I can't successfully do a master's and then do this. My body just can't take it on. And with like different people could be able to handle it differently. I know you did really well and were able to manage the job. Kudos to you and respect for that. But yeah, once I left that one, then I decided to just opt for dropping off my resume.
Mm.
And I just printed out, I think, 5 or 6 copies and just went to the mall downtown, Rideau
Mm.
Mall, and just walked into different stores. I was pretty lucky, to be fair, because the very first store that I walked into, which was Zara, I handed in my resume, got an interview done within 30 minutes of handing in my resume, got hired probably within an hour of handing in my resume.
That's
So
crazy.
it was very quick.
Uh, what
I
would
didn't
you
even
attribute that to? Sorry, not to cut you short. Hold on to that
no,
thought,
that's
but
okay.
I'm curious. Uh-huh.
Um, Honestly, I think it was just that it was the peak time of hiring.
Mm.
Like they were so eager to hire students and people to work for the store that they were just getting it done and over with.
Mm.
That would be my thinking is it was just the peak time.
So
Yeah.
it was like a timing thing for you as well. It's like
Yes.
you just happened to be in the right place at the right time.
Right time. Exactly. That,
Mm.
especially with that being my first store that I had ever walked into with my physical resume, let
Mm.
alone my first store that I'd ever walked into while being in the mall. I had never been to the mall.
Mm.
This was my first time walking in, and that was the first store I walked into.
You're mad
So,
lucky, that means. It was meant for you.
exactly.
Mm.
Exactly. So that made it a bit easier. It didn't take me too long to get the job.
Okay. And on average, how long did the search take? Now we're talking from the time you first landed and realized, okay, I can get a job, to the time you landed the job at Zara. How long did that process take?
To be fair, I landed mid August. I wasn't really looking for a job then. I was
Mm.
just kind of enjoying Canada. So I think I took probably 2 weeks before I started looking for a job.
Mm.
When I started looking for a job, it probably took me about a week.
So
Yeah,
on average, a fortnight to get everything together.
I would say so. I would say so, yes. But that it depends on the time you come. If you come in January, it might be a
Mm.
little bit more tricky because everyone has a job at that time. All the jobs are taken. If you come in
Okay.
the summer,
Mm.
it's probably a bit easier because people are kind of like their availability is changing. They're less available because they have school starting.
Mm.
So that means the stores have a lot more hours free that they need to fill. So they're
Mm.
more willing to hire. Yeah.
Okay. And that's where even the whole seasonal hiring we spoke about in one of our videos comes in as well. It's like for you, you happen to arrive at a time when they needed many people. Unfortunately, it wasn't a seasonal thing,
Yeah.
but then it could also swing the other way where they are not looking for anyone permanent. They just want you to pull up the first maybe 1, 2, 3 months, and then they let you go after.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. Probably because your experience, you stuck with the Zara job for basically your entire tenure of being a student, right?
Yes.
So I would like us now to dive into that so that we are kind of niching down for people that want to work in retail stores or that want
Yeah.
to help out in, even though it's a supermarket, I feel like if you're helping around a retail store, it might be similar to helping out maybe in a supermarket, maybe even smaller than a supermarket, because
Yeah.
of the role of it's basically the same, helping people. So with retail, maybe you can tell us what was the biggest challenge you faced working a retail job for the amount of time
Mhm.
you did.
I would say customers.
Mm,
they're they're a blessing, but you also
mhm,
experience the negative ones.
mm,
And when working in such stores, you really have to be able to maintain your composure, as you do in any customer service field, anything that involves customer service. You do have those ones that are just a little bit challenging. And it's those ones that you really have to be able to handle with care. Um, so in the beginning, it was a bit tricky because I was like, you know, I didn't really see their issues as issues. Someone would come complaining because, their winter jacket was too small and they would be so annoyed by it. And I'm like, I mean, you could have tried it on in the store and seen if it would fit, but
mhm,
I have to kind of be patient with you about that. So that was I think the tricky part for me in the beginning. But as time kind of went on and on and on, you get used to it. You'd sort
mm,
of learn the ins and outs of how to de-escalate the situation and kind of calm them down.
mm,
Um, Aside from that, I would also say the repetitiveness of the job. It's very the same thing. Every morning you come in, you're stacking the shelves, you're clearing the shelves, you're folding clothes, and you're doing that for about 8 hours. So it,
mm,
it did get to a point where you're like, okay, this is getting a bit too repetitive. But then again, it works so well for your schedule that you just don't, you're just like, I just have to deal with it.
yeah, you kind of become a zombie with it. Like, I just come in, I
Exactly.
do this, I do that, and I'm out, right?
Exactly. It's like, it's only 8 hours. I'll manage. Just in and out.
Mm,
Yeah.
okay. Um, Probably what we can talk about is whether what you were doing, because you're doing a master's, right?
Yeah.
So when I was that side in Kamloops, I met someone, I wouldn't call them my friend, probably an acquaintance, that told me when they were doing, because they were doing a master's too, the jobs that they were going after or positions were a little higher than the usual student jobs. So you find they are going for an assistant management position, right? Instead of the cleaner or the person that's helping out around a store. So they say them having an undergrad kind of gave them that leverage. And I just wanted to verify the the truth behind that or the authenticity behind that. Now, unfortunately, I didn't follow up the conversation. It was in passing. But do you think that's a feasible thing?
I personally don't think so. No. Um,
Mm,
the reason I say that is because when you're looking for such positions, they are, it's very rare for them to be getting international students to work, at least from my experience. Anything, I thought my undergraduate degree would be leverage for me, but most people didn't really consider that. The simple fact that I was a student and I could only work 20 hours a week, that already was like a put off for them. So it made it a bit more tricky. I think what counted more was my hours of availability than my undergrad degree. If I wasn't as available, I probably
mm,
wasn't going to get the job. And that was most of the majority of the jobs that I wasn't successful with or didn't hear back from on Indeed were these professional jobs like a law clerk or a legal assistant or something that I can use, put my degree to use with.
mm,
I can put my degree to use. So no, I think that one is, you're really lucky if you score something like that.
mm.
I'd say you're really lucky, especially here in Ottawa, because most of the jobs are, you'll find a lot of the people are working in government. A lot of the companies are government based.
Mm-hmm.
So they're not, first of all, they're not even looking for temporary residents. They want permanent residents or citizens. That
Mm,
already narrows the pool significantly. And then when you start playing around this narrow pool, you're competing against national students who have an undergrad degree and are have some solid status in Canada, and
mm,
and they don't have any limits to the hours they can work, at least I believe, and
mm,
temporary students who have a limit, who have a cap, and they can't exceed a certain amount of hours. There's just too much of a burden on temporary residents than there is on permanent or citizens.
mm. That makes a lot of sense, though. It's like you're not the best pick for the business, even though they were allowing someone with your credentials, right?
Exactly.
Okay, so that question was me going off at a tangent. The question about whether your degree, your undergrad, had any weight in you getting the job. Let's continue on the train of thought, on the train of questioning regarding the retail store. Were there any
Yes.
perks that you noticed um, as a worker in the store in comparison maybe to other jobs, maybe with your friends, or just period, any kind of perks you saw?
The first thing that comes to mind was the flexibility. You could kind of adapt your schedule almost every 2 weeks. Like if you had an exam coming up or exam week was coming up, you could retailer your schedule based on that. And I see that's predominantly in the retail field, or like working in like grocery stores. They have a bit more flexibility and understanding of your schedule. The second thing was the discounts. You get phenomenal discounts,
I was
amazing
hoping you would say
discounts.
something like that. uh,
Amazing, amazing discounts. I remember at Zara, we used to get 25% off
mm,
as an employee discount. And if you couple that 25% off with items that are already on sale, you're basically paying like $15 for something that's originally maybe $60, $70, which is perfect. It's phenomenal. So
I
I'd say
swear.
that definitely a perk. And
uh,
Zara's percentage was 25, but I know friends who had sales for like 40%.
and where were they working?
I think it was Simon's, if I remember
Mm,
right, Simon's and maybe H&M, if I remember correctly.
I have half the mind to bleep out these brand names because they are not paying us. But go ahead because this is the essence of the podcast, right? To help people kind of make these decisions as they come that side. So the money will come in a different way. It's just the thought that crossed my mind when you were saying H&M, Simons. I was like, I've not even heard of Simons before. Yeah, but I get you.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, so they definitely got, there were some stores that had bigger discounts, but
Mm,
all in all, it's the discount that you get
okay.
that's so advantageous. Um, I would also say, well, this I guess is really specific to your location of residence or accommodation. For me, my job was just because it was in the mall and I wasn't too far from the mall. It was
Mm,
just maybe maximum 7 minute walk from my residence.
yeah, easily accessible.
It was so easily accessible. And
Mm,
even then, if you're working like downtown in the Rideau Mall, getting the train into the mall and getting to your job isn't going to be as complicated or as hard. Now, if you're on the malls more on the outskirts, that might be a bit more tricky. But if
mm.
you're like Rideau Mall or Saint Laurent Mall, which are the two main malls that I personally go to, you'll be able to connect pretty easily.
Our audience will appreciate that information. Uh, considering you've spoken about the discounts, that's what I was hoping you would say. I hope they had some of those because I know, even though I've not worked in retail stores, I know one of the things that they give their employees are discounts, right, on clothes. So it makes sense. So if you think of working in a retail store, there is your proof. You get some discounts. Hopefully, it applies across the board. But that's the experience at Zara. Um, what were some of the requirements you needed? Some of the requirements they asked of you when you first went to apply for a job. Do
At
you remember?
Zara,
Yes.
um, the minimum was probably like a high school diploma.
Mm,
So minimum level of education was a high school diploma. And you will find that when you're working with some of these people, you might actually find some of them are still in high school. Like you might find you're working with maybe 16, 17-year-olds at the same store. They expect some level of high school education. They didn't really need customer service experience or previous experience in the retail industry, as long as you were able to vocally express how you would address issues with customers and when such issues arise, or how you'd handle it. That was sufficient, because I told them I don't have any retail experience. I don't have any experience dealing with customers to the degree that you guys deal with them. But, I just gave them an honest opinion and how exactly I would address any issues that arise, how I would expect customers to be treated by employees. And that was sufficient. They didn't really need much. Now, you will find that some places do require, they don't require, but they prefer 1 year of customer experience or customer service work, but don't let that put you off from applying. Just still drop off your resume, because you never really know if they,
that's true.
especially if they say preferred. If they say it's preferred rather than required, they have a bit more flexibility there.
Okay.
Yeah,
I feel like the answer you've given us um, applies to probably Canadian students,
yeah.
and it's not focused on the international student, which is what I am going for. So I'm sure
Mhm.
the requirements for you will be different for someone who came from outside Canada than someone who is a local, right? So if if you could give us
Well,
some of those details, that would come in handy.
yeah, to be fair, I mean, these were kind of just like standard requirements. Like they applied whether you were national or international. If you're international, you had to have a minimum level of a high school diploma.
Mm,
If you had a degree, well and good. If you were coming for an undergraduate degree, you still have the minimum of a high school diploma. So it applied in that regard, but you also had to be able to you have to be allowed to work in Canada. That applies to both Canadian citizens, permanent residents, or temporary residents. So in the situation of temporary residents, you have to, your visa has to have a specific clause that allows you to work off campus, which is the case with most, but not all visas. So yeah, as long as you're allowed to work in Canada, that should be, that's pretty much the only additional requirement that I remember them asking me about.
okay. Okay. Is there
Yeah.
anything else that you feel maybe someone who's interested in retail might want to know?
Um, you will be standing a lot. So buy some
I wouldn't have
comfortable
even
shoes.
thought about that. Uh-huh.
You
Mm,
will be, the amount of times that I got back home and I just felt like it wasn't as tasking as the cleaning job. The cleaning job required your full body from head to toe. But
mm,
retail, it's mainly, by the time you get back home, it's mainly your feet that are just aching. They're in so
mm.
much pain. So you just have to be prepared to get a bit of foot pain, but it will only be for like the first maybe 2 weeks, and then you'll get used to it.
Mm.
So the foot pain that you'll feel is not, they're not harassing you. They're not torturing you in any way, shape, or form.
Uh,
It's
that's just
part
the
of it.
nature of the job.
Exactly, especially if you're doing an 8-hour shift, your feet
Mm.
will hurt by the time you get home. So just make sure you have a pretty comfortable pair of shoes and you'll get used to it.
Yeah, that's a pro tip from someone who has worked there. So I would take heed if I was listening to this and I'm like, I want to work in retail. This would be the person to listen to. On a final note, I would like you to tell us if you are satisfied with your job, right? If you ever considered changing your job while you were a student.
Yeah. Um, I would say I was maybe 50%. I was like maybe 60% satisfied. I
Mm,
was satisfied enough not to really want to put myself through the hustle of trying to change jobs because I understood how cumbersome the job search out there can be. I didn't really want to subject myself to that. I was just in a very comfortable place, and I was like, you know what? This is working. It's getting whatever it needs to whatever needs to get taken care of. It's getting taken care of. That's sufficient for me for now.
Mm.
Um, so yeah, the only point that I decided to switch jobs was when I now graduated university. That's the only time where I was like, okay, I need to start putting my degrees to use. But even then, like right now, I wouldn't mind going back into retail. Like if
Really?
someone, yeah, if someone
Yeah.
offered me a job in retail, I
Mm.
would go back. Not leaving my position though.
Okay.
Like
That's what I thought you were saying. I was gonna be
no,
like,
no, no, no,
that's
no, no, no,
very
no, no,
interesting.
no, 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 not
That's
leaving
gonna be
my
very
position.
interesting. Mm.
Not leaving my position. I'm really happy where I am. What I would do is maybe like a weekend job.
Mm.
If it's like only Saturdays and Sundays, I wouldn't really have an issue going back. I'd gladly go back to it.
And do you have the means to, like, you're allowed to do that?
Yeah, you have a lot of, because I'm no longer an international student. I'm now on a work permit.
So you can do,
So,
is there a cap on how many jobs you can do on a work permit?
oh no, I don't think so.
So you can do two, three, but then you only have so many hours in a day. So
That's the thing. Yeah, because you'll find like during the week, Monday to Friday, you're doing an 8-hour shift unless you're going to be working overnight.
mm,
It gets to a point where it starts affecting the quality of work that you're delivering at the different
mm,
jobs. So you
mm,
find people do have like a cap, maybe 3 jobs is the most I've heard of, um, where someone is working like in the nights and then during the day and then over the weekend, but it's
mm,
nothing too tasking in the nights, for example. It's just like care work or something pretty light.
mm.
Yeah.
Okay. I guess that will also be some good news for people that are watching the video. It's like after you finish your program, you will not have limits because right now the limit is a 20-hour limit per student, right? In a week,
Yeah.
7 days.
Yeah.
So you split that, you find a job that will allow you to exhaust that time. And it's really a choice. You don't have to work 20 hours. You can literally work 10 hours and just leave the 10 hours, to whoever. So
Right.
it's really up to you how you do it. And on that note, we would encourage you to subscribe because we are going to actually be talking about that, whether a 20-hour work week is enough for a student. That is a video planned down the pipeline. So yeah, we look forward to doing that. Other than that, Trina, do you have something to say to the people?
So subscribe, like, hit the comment. Let us know what you think on the video. Um, Let us know if you have any questions or anything that you would like us to talk about down the line. Um, yeah, let us know and we'll get back to you. But like, subscribe, hit that share button, let a friend know about this video because you don't want to be selfish with the information about Canada.